Okay, so let's frame this here. The director's take from Alec Dawson. He's the lead gameplay designer for Overwatch. He's up there with Aaron Keller. Top the notch, knows his stuff, moved his way up the ladder. And we're going to be taking a look at a director's take that talks a lot about statistics. Now, I am vaguely familiar with some of the things that are going to be talked about here, but I actually have not read this. And I think it's going to be worth unpacking more. The big controversy about this one is the discrepancy of choices of heroes and maps. I believe especially maps in this particular one on ranks and how certain ranks disdain certain game modes. I'd like to break down a little bit of why I think that's the case, talk about what we can do about that, whether there needs to be anything done about it, as well as a just general discussion on assistant game director as well. Sorry, thank you guys. And as well as a little bit more of an investigation into basically Overwatch's apparent increase in transparency recently, which has actually been really, really nice, so that there's just a lot more public statistics out there nowadays, and that seems to be continuing to go on. All right, hey everyone, I'm with another philosophically flavored director's take that tackles an important set of goals we're trying to accomplish on the Overwatch team: more transparency, more information, and more power to you. Map voting data is an excellent example of these goals and actions. At competitive ranks above Masters 5, Control is the most popular map mode, followed by Flashpoint and Push. But when you look at ranks below Masters 5, so keep in mind that this is basically the top 4% of players, even a little bit less. Hybrid is the most played Flashpoint, and Flashpoint is the least selected mode. Okay, so this is the picture here. So let's actually take a look at this here. So average map vote score. So this isn't like a percentage thing. Now this is interesting here. This isn't just like a percentage breakdown. This is like how many votes each map type gets, which is kind of a weird way of breaking it down, but it makes sense given the fact that there's 3 maps that you're voting for. What I will say is this doesn't necessarily, I don't know exactly if this is a perfect example of the most loved and most hated game modes. What this is these are the game modes that probably spark the most passion. So you look at something like a hybrid. A good example of a hybrid would be King's Row. King's Row comes up, everyone wants to play King's Row. Blizzard World comes up, everyone wants to vote Blizzard World. But you notice that you're not forced to vote. So if somebody's just kind of indifferent, or a game mode or a map, it just doesn't really provoke a response, it probably won't be voted for at all. Not because, it's a little too zoomed in, sorry. Not because it's hated, but because people are just kind of indifferent to it. You get what I'm saying? So we can definitely come to some conclusions from this. Let me actually change the scene here. This might be a little bit easier. We can definitely come to some conclusions here, but there's also not a ton that we can guaranteed pull from this, you know? It's just a little bit, the math is a little messy with this, is what I'm saying here. That being said, we could definitely kind of come to some general gut instincts checks, which let's kind of go down the list. Control is appreciated pretty well by both teams. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a discrepancy here. Higher ranked players are definitely more likely to vote for Control maps, a little bit more faster pace, faster tempo, short range, faster rounds, which is funny because I actually think Control is definitely probably the most RNG of the game modes. Maybe that's something to discuss at a later time, but first fight is very important in Control. So I'm actually not a huge Control fan myself. I'm fine with it. It's not offensive, but it's actually a very RNG game mode, very snowbally. That's kind of an interesting take, right? High ranked players not always choosing the most competitive integrity mode. They just like Control. All right. Matches are shorter. Flashpoint is hated by lower ranks. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on, so hang tight. We'll put a pin in that one. We'll come back to this one later. Hybrid is very much loved, and Escort, we'll say both of these. I think you could probably look at Escort's unpopularity here and there is probably more to do with the fact that there's more sniper maps. And so I guess Hybrid's a little bit more compressed, but very much loved. A lot of those maps are older, more nostalgia, whereas higher ranks don't like Hybrid and Escorts. Again, we'll conjecture to that one a little bit later. We'll come back to this one. Push, it's fine. Not hated necessarily by either side of the equation. It's just kind of whatever. So we'll go back to this a little bit later. So I'm going to finish this first. So if you're in Silver and convinced you're always playing hybrid maps and your friend is in Masters, you'll both be correct based reality. Let's zoom in a little bit here by your personal Overwatch environment. Let's actually change our scene here. That environment creates a reality that is entirely factual, at least from where you're standing. This is something we often consider when implementing improvements and changes to Overwatch. Some changes like balance tuning might feel odd if you're in the rank threshold we are targeting with a specific adjustment. With that in mind, we've been thinking about what we can do to broaden your perspective. I may be aging myself here, but do you remember when all the answers to a brand new video game weren't instantly accessible? When I used to go to local fighting game tournaments and someone whipped out a new combo, we'd all learn it in real time as a community and add it to our repertoire. Things have changed over the years, but as designers, we still like to chase the experience through deep discovery windows. Think of discovery windows as the amount of time it takes for players to figure out the best way to handle big changes. Like new perks or new heroes, it's that time where everyone is learning together and things aren't min-maxed yet. So that's absolutely a very, very fun thing to enjoy, partly because the whole process of learning and discovering as a community is not only something that's fun as an individual, problem solving, skill curve, and so on, but it's also, there's definitely like a community event. I have honestly been really bad at this back in the day. Yeah, because I would always join new games after they'd already been released for like several years. Like I didn't play Elden Ring on release. I didn't play Sekiro on release. I haven't played Expedition 33 on release. But recently I kind of experienced that with, you guys might have picked up on Elden Ring Night Rain, right? I've been talking about that a little bit. That one was like a really cool experience for me because I actually was learning the game with the community. And so I was like constantly checking Reddit and checking YouTube videos, and like I discovered some cool stuff on my own before other people, and like I'd seen it on Reddit. And so and then I learned some people from Reddit, and then I want to go share it. And it was really satisfying to kind of learn live time. And there was just enough opaqueness within that game to where I actually felt like I was able to kind of like learn stuff and not immediately solve it. But yeah, I agree with that. The discovery window is my personal favorite time in games. Everyone throws theories and ideas that we'll see what sticks and so on. Social media can be a double-edged sword when it comes to discovery windows. Nothing brings the community together more than working through the same puzzle and trying new strategies with the friends. So the conversation after an impactful update is always amazing to see. On the other hand, there's always seems to be a race to crack the code of a new patch and make people market the solution as the best option. That is true. That is true. That's why I've always leaned on the side of like nuance and being a little bit cautious, because I really like new patches because they shake things up. I think a lot of old games would benefit from newer patches. But yeah, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's reasonable for people to always consider what they're playing and how to maximize their success. But there is an innate risk of cutting your own discovery window and the joy of that process when you simply accept answers handed to you instead of seeking your own solutions. When information is available to everyone equally, the opportunity to make your own judgment is also distributed equally. Okay, so let me take this opportunity really quick here to say this is why I don't do tier lists. I don't do season tier lists. There's two reasons why this is the case. Number one, if you're the type of person that needs to go watch a season tier list to know what to play in a season, you're actively sabotaging your enjoyment of the game. But yes, I think that people that pursue tier lists or want to know quick tips and tricks are actively sabotaging not only their improvement, but also their fun. You're making the game worse for yourself. In addition to that, people that are distributing tier lists are always distributing misinformation. Always, without exception, distributing misinformation. But my guy is experienced and knows the best. Sure. But you can't possibly know every significant potential variation or outcome of a specific patch. You can't possibly know. You can't possibly look at a patch. I can give you guys a general guess, but there will always be variables. Even if it's an educated guess from somebody that actually knows what they're doing, there will always be something that you miss. You can't possibly react to all of it. So why would you try? I mean, freaking pro players don't even know what meta. They think they might know, but they don't know. Just play the game. And if you look at a patch and they hard nerf your character objectively and make it really bad, okay, then, but we don't always know what is going to result from that. So if you watch tier lists because you find them funny and you enjoy the discussion, fine. But if you are educated in any way, shape, or form by tier lists, you are a fool, because you're compromising not only your potential enjoyment of learning things, your enjoyment of the game, but you're also biasing yourself heavily to one perspective of the patch. I see this all the time. Anytime I'm like coaching like gold plat players, there'll be someone in the lobby that's like, you shouldn't play this tank, it's bad, and they're completely wrong, but they got spoon-fed from some other thing, or it's like their opinions like a year or two outdated. It's like the people that are like, oh, Malga's so incredibly brain dead and easy and super, super powerful and low ranks. And I'm like, dude, Malga's like not super great. But honestly, I don't even know if that's the case. Maybe he is, but it's just like he's not played very often. And like it's just like crazy, like how easy it is to develop an opinion and stick with it. And this is like a living and breathing game that's constantly changing. And so you just can't possibly have a permanently up-to-date opinion. I've been realizing this recently with the perks. You guys saw my recent perk guide. I really tried to be as nuanced as I possibly could, but I think I wasn't, I knew that I wasn't going to be perfectly right with every single thing. Turns out that absolutely the Hanzo scatter arrow thing is bad, and it's just like really hard to stay fully up to date on these kind of things because there's too many moving parts, and I think that's a good thing to have. Anyway, Armed with Truth, offering you more real-life information about Overwatch may risk cutting that discovery window on our end, but our team is willing to take that risk in hopes that providing more visibility leads to a deeper understanding of what we do and why we do it. True. Is it a way that we do that making the discovery window easier to navigate? So from a statistical perspective, a discovery window is still there when the pick rate of something isn't astronomical. Let's just look at this picture right here. Let me give you guys an example. There was a significant, let's just ignore the numbers here for a second. Significant patch. Lucio gets buffed or nerfed, whatever. We look at the pick rates of Lucio, and in gold and plat, played for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We look at the pick rates. Lucio's pick rates like 6-7%. As a plat player, even if Lucio's win rate was like 48%, 49%, there's not enough of a sample size to guarantee that Lucio's not an optimal pick in plat. You're playing Wrecking Ball and Masters, and he has a 1% pick rate. Doesn't matter whether the number's high or low. You don't know whether the character's good or not. You just don't know. Like you have, there's such a small sample size. Like you really only can tell when pick rates are very high because the chances of that character's strengths and weaknesses being explored and tested becomes significantly higher. So you just don't know. So yes, the discovery window might be cramped by a little bit because we start to know what's probably the best or the worst, but we're really not sure. And as Alex says, there's that compromise here that they're making because they want to be a little bit more transparent about what they're doing and why we're doing it. And it helps to educate some conjecture. Now, it's still conjecture. I'm going to try to make sure that this doesn't give us objective facts necessarily, but it is conjecture. An upcoming website we've been working with the Battle.net team called Hero Stats will also offer information you may have been looking for. Here's a sneak with a placeholder data. In addition to being able to source data online, we're also keen to give you more information inside Overwatch. We don't want to give away too many Season 18 spoilers right away, but one feature we think will be really excited is the advanced info panel. We've talked about this one already. Gavin's been, I think, working on this one for some time to give you fall off range of casting, exact amount of headshot damage on Hanzo's storm arrow. All the in-game information that has not been communicated will now be communicated. Nice. As a bonus, seeing the same concrete data our development team uses may help you better understand balance changes and tuning that may not directly apply to your personal Overwatch environment. Yes. Yes. Remember, data isn't the only thing we base balance changes on. That'd be a combination of intuition, feedback, and data. But this should help to understand what the data looks like when those decisions are made. Okay, good stuff. So there's a definite concern that like, oh, the stats are going to get abused. People are going to misconstrue it and use it as, yeah, they will, for sure. But I still think that like you have to, people are doing that regardless anyway. And then at least it gives good faith actors more opportunities to kind of explain and think things through and provide some criticism. Not just like, oh, we're going to support Blizzard's decisions. Maybe it gives us more educated criticism. You know what I'm saying? So this will be good. Now, I want to briefly talk about the map thing here as well, because I basically made a discussion, I had a little bit of a discussion about how, you know, why do lower ranks hate push in Flashpoint so much? We'll focus on Flashpoint and we'll focus on hybrid, kind of the contrast between the two, because there's a clear difference between the two. And there's a lot of variables at play. Let's actually break these down here, because I've spent a lot of time working with lower rank players and talking with lower rank players and higher rank players and so on. Let's talk about the easy ones first. Easy low-hanging fruit here. Hybrid and escort maps are significantly more likely to be sniper-oriented maps. Higher rank players are more able to exploit the strengths of snipers to the point to where a good sniper on a good map can really kind of change the entire dynamic of how a map is being played. That doesn't mean that you can't play snipers in low ranks. The output of those characters becomes a lot more oppressive. And there is nothing that a higher ranked player hates more than feeling that the game is outside of his or her control. And a sniper on a very good hybrid or escort map is just very oppressive. And that is objectively the case and has been for a long time. So people hate snipers. People hate sniper maps, and even with some of the reworks that Circuit and Junkertown have received to make that a little bit better, they're still not done, especially Circuit Royale. Still think Circuit has a lot of work to be done. And so lower ranked players are going to be less oppressed by that type of crap than a higher ranked player. Easy fix. Easy understanding of exactly what's going on here. Second thing, this one's not going to be quite so easy, but I think it's worth talking about. Maybe, well, this one, we'll do one more thing. I think old maps are generally hybrid and escort. Flashpoint's a new kid in the block. The block. Push is a new kid on the block. And so a lot of lower ranked players enjoy this feeling of safety and familiarity. We'll kind of carry this point. There's a reason why I'm doing this one first, that a lot of those older maps have. There's more familiar, they know what they're doing, and so on. And carrying off into that, and this one's going to get a little bit spicy, is that lower ranked players generally are not likely to enjoy, they don't want to engage mentally as much into the situation of what they're doing. Let me give you guys a weird analogy. Long time ago, we used to play a Zenyatta. I was a Zenyatta one trick. And not Zenyatta one trick, but two trick. And I really struggled positioning with Zenyatta on control. Because back in Overwatch 1, Oasis University, or Oasis City Center, you guys know what I'm talking about, the big round point, right? I didn't know where to stand. Because all the other maps, I kind of knew my rotation. I go from here, then I go from here, then I go from here. To just kind of like follow the checklist of where to hold. I would go into like Oasis City Center, which was Flashpoint-esque. There wasn't like a hard rule of where to stand. And eventually I got to run Masters, Grandmaster, and I realized that a lot of it had to be very dynamic. In other words, depending on the situation, even in 66, I could go from here, but I actually had to pay more attention to what my team and what the enemy team was doing and just try to find cover wherever that is. Even it wasn't a great map for Zen no matter what I did, but at least I could solve it a little bit better. Live time. A lot of players in Overwatch 1 and a lot of Overwatch 2 players even now fall into that trap, which I fell into, where I still have players coming to me when I get coaching, when I give them coaching, and they're like, where do I hold in this map? And that question is fundamentally flawed, because especially in 5v5, especially in Flashpoint and control and push maps, it depends, because you really don't know exactly where the objective fight is going to be happening. With Hybrid and Escort, due to the linear nature of the maps, there is a much clearer checklist of you go from point A to point B to point C. It's not exactly the case, but it's more the case with those maps. It's much more linear, and consequently, it's usually a little bit more defender's advantage, which means you can set up a little bit more cozy on defense, and on attack, you're just kind of sitting there trying to break the choke. Again, I'm kind of exaggerating here. It's not necessarily the case, but it's more so. So lower ranked players don't want to engage as much into having to think about live time positioning or having to defend from threats from multiple different angles. They'd rather deal with the convenient inconvenience than having to live time solve a problem realistically. Because this is, let's be honest here, Masters and above is like 3.5% player base. Now, if we extended this to Diamond and above or even Plat and above, I think we'd see still a bias, right? But it's actually not, it's something we really have to ask ourselves. Like, we could sit here and poo-poo on quote-unquote lower ranked players for forever, but the reality is that a lot of players don't like these maps. Here's my thought though. My thought that is, in the way Overwatch is currently designed, I think it's okay. I think that we have to put up with it. Let me give you guys an example. What is easier to do? Sit at home and watch Netflix and eat popcorn, or go out and play sports, or go out and hang out with your friends? You get what I'm saying? Now, this is a little bit of an exaggeration here, but as humans, we have to fight what is like conveniently easy, because sometimes the more fun experience is the one that requires more effort, and yet we're averse to that. I know I'm really digging into the psychology here, but we have to. There is a reason here, right? Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, it's not that deep." It is that deep. Something has to be solved here. You get what I'm saying? Like, we can't blow it off as nothing, because this is a massive statistical change here. So I guess my point being is, like, maybe the Overwatch developers need lower ranked players to eat their vegetables until they get used to it. A good example of this would be the fact that a lot of support players were incredibly whiny at the start of Overwatch 2's release about how, AFKing, healing, not dueling, not taking angles was really bad, but they kind of figured it out. Last point here, because I think when we're talking about like what are some subjective opinions about being approached from multiple different angles, is that bad? Is that a skill issue? Is it, one of the things that I saw by far the most with people complaining was that objectively you have a walking simulator. You could talk about, hybrid and escort, but like, let's not say it's always multiple angles. People just don't like walking back from spawn for 6 years. And I do think that was objectively true for some time. It's just rough. It just is. It's a long way to walk, except something's changed. Two things have changed. Actually, three things have changed recently. One, we'll talk about the easiest one first, which is that Atlas was designed with that in mind, and so that the forward spawns, depending on the point that you're going to, they actually are on top. It's underneath, another location. So you are basically spawned to a position where you're able to re-engage a little bit faster. That's awesome. Okay, but there's two other things that we want to talk about that have changed since Flashpoint's release, which I think has a very important impact on our lagging perception of the game mode. One is obvious, and this one has been been around for a little bit, but I think people are a little still low. This is what we're looking at here. Speed boost from spawn, significant, right? Gives you an extra second or two to get back to the fight, and you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Okay, sure, not that big of a deal. One of the things that I noticed when I was testing the new rework game modes, you guys already know where I'm going with this, is, well, let's see, let's take a look here. Who remembers where you'd spawn when you die in this game mode? Do you guys remember? You would spawn like back here. No joke. You'd spawn back here all the time. In fact, to the point to where one of, do you guys remember, was it Chorong for the professional main support player? This guy had a full-on rollout. He would go Moira to Fade, I believe, forward. And then he'd go Lifeweaver to pull his other support here. Then he'd swap Lucio to amp them to the door. And then he'd swap to whatever he was on. He'd have like the full thing to min-max to get 2 or 3 seconds out of the spawn door faster. And because everyone's freaking spawned back here, which honestly was just a really bad design choice. Like, it's pretty, yeah, but why? And this is a problem with New Junk City as well. Something has to die. Okay, I died. Oh, wait, I'm already out. Okay, well, hang on. Bambi died, Imp died, Sneaky Goatee died. You notice the difference here? And I don't know if this was not documented or maybe I just missed it, but I didn't realize this. It's all the time now. Like, basically, without exception, in Atlas as well, you're spawning near the spawn doors. So you look at that and you're like, okay, that one was a little bit further back. But I think this one was also by design because look at which spawn point is unlocked. It's the close one. So there was some very sneaky changes that they did to spawn points depending on where you are on the map. Point-wise. So and I noted that all the spawn points are closer now. So here's what I did, is I wanted to test this. This isn't an official, perfectly scientific. This is just a quick breeze through, I would say, 2 or 3 escort maps, all the Flashpoint maps, a couple of push maps here. And what I did is I timed the walk back from not the spawn door, but from where you spawn in the spawn door into where you're actually starting to engage in combat. And here's what I found out. Limited mobility characters, I did all of them. Basically characters with either no mobility or something like a Cassie that has a tiny little mobility, okay? On Atlas, almost every fight, you're getting back to a point of engagement if you're walking directly to the engagement, with the exception of transition points. That's the one criticism I can get, but technically you can fight in transitions, so we won't talk about that. 10 to 11 seconds. 10 to 11 seconds on Atlas. If we jump to New Junk City, it can be up to 14 seconds on slower characters. It's a little bit broader, even post-rework. But it's often around 8 to 11 seconds, depending on where the hold is. Suravasa, the one that we're looking at right now, it's 10 seconds basically almost consistently, even with slower characters, 12 to 13 seconds at worst, and so on. So all the Flashpoint walkbacks are can be anywhere from like 7 to 8, up to 12, 13, something along those lines. We're going to compare that to Escort Hybrid. I only looked at 2 here, just the first 2 that I had in my thing, but regardless. Circuit Royale, 11 to 15 seconds, depending on where your spawn goes, on most respawns. 11 to 15 before you're back in the engagement. On close fights, 8 to 9. What generally happened with Escort and Hybrid is that if you were shoved into your choke, you would take about 8 to 9 seconds to get to the choke. But if you died on defense, you could have anywhere from 11 to 15, sometimes even longer, 17, 18 seconds of a walk back if you're in defense. But oftentimes it was about the same or even a second or 2 longer than Flashpoint. Blizzard World, I did Blizzard World as well, about 10 seconds consistently, 7 to 8 seconds on closer fights, but up to 15 or even 16 seconds on slower heroes that are spawning further back, especially in like second point. But Hollywood, I had a 19-20 second walk back to retake a position and re-engage on second point defense, and generally anywhere from 10 to 11 to 12 seconds on most positional holds. And this is a consistent theme. Basically what I realized is that with Hybrid and Escort, there's a lot more variance with your walk back than there is with Flashpoint. Flashpoint's much more consistent. Hybrid, Escort can be a little shorter or can be a lot longer depending on the situation. But actually, on average, I don't have the numbers on this, but I would say they're very close, maybe even Flashpoint having like a second advantage in terms of walkbacks. I had some suspicions about Push, because I think Push has a bit of this problem as well. Colosso can be as few as 7 seconds on a walk back with a slow character, but as many as 20 with a long spawn. Esperanza can be as many as 20 as well on a slow character on the worst fights, but oftentimes 10 to 12. So I would say Push, like Escort and Hybrid, has a very big variance with walkbacks sometimes, but I would say on average a slightly longer walkback. So having a walking simulator accusation for Push, I would say is not 100% earned, but yeah, it's more earned than the other game modes. So the whole walking simulator accusation is a old perception before the speed, before the recent respawn changes that have shaved at least 2 or 3 seconds consistently off of every walk back, and honestly, as many as 4 or 5. Now, before those changes, was Flashpoint more of a walking simulator? I feel like, yeah, objectively. It was at least 4 or 5 seconds, I'll say at least 2 or 3 seconds longer for every character and every walk back. With the speed boost, with the front spawns, the answer is objectively no. Not even close. It's actually better than Escort and Hybrid in most situations. So, the reason why I think that's important to highlight here is I'm not calling low-ranked players stupid. I'm saying the low-ranked players have a lagging perception of the game mode because they haven't played it enough recently. But yeah, your perception is wrong. It's understandable that it was wrong because it was right not long ago, but it's not accurate anymore. But I think Flashpoint's most justified criticism is that it can be a little bit disorienting. And I think any changes to improve Flashpoint should be focused on it can be potentially disorienting, while also admitting the fact, thank you so much, that lower ranked players there is a bit of a skill issue and that they will need to get accustomed to the more dynamism that Overwatch 2 as a spirit has more of than compared to Overwatch 1. I think that's good. I like that. It's not just about what I think, though. That's clearly what the game is designed for with 5v5 and the more mobility creep that we've seen. And so you're either going to get with the times or you're going to move on. If you move on and say that Overwatch is not the game for me, I liked it better when it was more snipers and we had more chokes and more team play and more coordination about breaking chokes, and it was a little bit more, felt like chess. This feels like speed chess. I'm not going to sit here and say that you're objectively wrong. Your taste is your taste, but your game preference is not the way that the developers see that the game is right now. Your mileage may vary. Nobody's objectively wrong here. The only thing that's objectively wrong is the lagging perception of walkback times. And I think there needs to be some discussion about why players struggle with that kind of thing.